All right, everyone. Welcome to the Good in the Head podcast. Today, I have with me a great friend from halfway across the world, Nathan Simmonds. He is the author of Stop Working and Start Living. It is this book right here, and it is available on Amazon. And I will definitely put links to everyone in the comments below so that anyone interested after this conversation can go out and buy it. And I highly recommend that you do. Absolutely love this book. I keep it on the shelf and I check it out every once in a while. And just this morning, I was reviewing it again. And there are some things that I'd like to just dive right into, Nathan. Welcome. And thank you so much for agreeing to create the time to be a guest on this podcast. I know you're super busy. I really appreciate it, man.
No, Pete, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on this space. And I'm trying to find what the right thing is. The thing that I love most when I see the pictures of your notes and I see the pictures of what it is you're reading, Pete, is the meticulous detail that you put into it, your side notes, your footnotes that you add into it, the pencil scrawls, the lines, the highlighting. And I know that for you to say that you go back to read what I wrote, and even for me, that isn't even where my headspace is now. That's where I started some of my kind of personal development kind of sharings. For you to share that now, to say you keep going about that's high praise, and thank you. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for taking the time and putting in the effort to come out with not just this book, but to create the coaching business that you've created to empower and help so many people all over the world, man.
Thank you.
In the back of the book, it says there's a lot of noise, a lot of overwhelm, and a lot of chaos. If we don't take time to get the tools and skills to overcome this, move beyond it, and do our version of incredible, our version, we'll be swallowed up by it.
Yep.
I love that. What inspired you to put that in the back of the book?
Do you know what? It's because it's so easy to wake up in the morning and just go and get in your car or whatever and go to work and kind of clock in and clock out and do what you're told to do in all those spaces and not even realize that that's not where you're designed to be. When we're looking at especially the constructs of so-called modern corporate spaces and stuff, is we're living up to somebody else's expectation. We go to work to be measured by their value or what they think of you or their version of what worth is and what needs to be turned out. And we just go and do that. Why? Because that's what we were taught to do. That's what our parents did. That's what our grandparents did. And I mentioned this in the book, this is what I learned, that school is an outdated factory model to create factory workers. And that's one of the key premises for the book, because I was so unhappy, so frustrated with the fact that I felt I didn't fit in. And I was looking around and looking what was going on in the so-called modern economic climate or job market. And you see that how many people are really actually pissed off with their work. How many people are, suffering from anxiety or depression? Why? Not because their life is a mess, because actually they're not doing what they're designed to be doing. They're not fully expressing their capability. But we go into this space being told that this is what we need to do. And that's what school teaches you. It teaches you three things: turn up on time, do as you're told, and live up to someone else's expectation. And then while you're doing that, because you're not expressing yourself and doing that thing, that's when the mental health challenges come in. But you go there, but you're being told that this is what you have to do. And you have to turn up at 10 to 9 to make sure you're ready to start work at 9 o'clock. And you have to do this, and you have to turn out this many widgets on your factory conveyor belt, and so on and so forth. And all that noise is like, well, actually, I'm not achieving this, or it doesn't feel right to me. And actually that feeling of not right, that's what creates the noise. It becomes kind of like the static background, on the old school TV when it wasn't tuned in properly. When you feel like you're not tuned in properly, actually that constant background noise is your subconscious going, this isn't okay. You actually need to tune in a bit more clearly to who you are, so you can cut that stuff out. And the overwhelm is just a symptom to say something's not quite right here. It's either saying that something's not quite right here where you are, or actually you've got to a point where you've outgrown and evolved beyond that space where you actually are. And it's now time to move on, let some of those things go to someone else who's ready to do that work and enjoys it, because you now don't enjoy it because you're ready to move on and get promoted or go into a different role. So that overwhelm builds up. That the noise is causing confusion. It's distracting you from where you need to be. Oh, I need to be doing this. I'm obligated to do this. Da, 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 da. So that static noise comes up. The overwhelm meets it, because actually that confusion is stopping you from achieving what it is you need to achieve, or to hit your objectives or your markers or whatever. And then the overwhelm kicks in. I'm not achieving, I'm not succeeding, I'm not displaying who I am, I'm not expressing who I am at a fundamental level. And then that's when the house of cards comes falling down, and we have some major problems inside our own psyche and well-being.
So what I'm hearing is any physical or mental symptom or manifestation of illness that we experience is actually an indicator that something is out of alignment.
Shit, yeah.
So realigning on a daily basis with the what we are, as we continue to upgrade the who we consider ourselves to be, who we identify as within these human bodies, realigning with the what we all truly are. That is the magic for me. What is it for you?
Yeah, no, it is the realignment, and that's something that happened to me last year, but this is another part of the story we'll get into in a minute.
Awesome.
It's that physical symptom. It's so easy. You sit, and I talk about this. I can't even remember if I mentioned this in the book, but I talk about this a lot. You know, if you sit on a drawing pin, that hurts. So you get up and you pull the pin out your ass. Yeah. But what happens is when we're going in and kind of looking at the mental health thing, we go there and we get that little drip of stress, and we go, well, that's just par for the course. Okay, I'll tolerate that. And then someone says, oh, you tolerated one drip. Hey, have another drip. And then
compiles over time and manifests in horrible ways.
Yeah,
and causes addictions.
Yeah, a huge one, you know. But you know, potentially some of this trauma over here is causing the addiction of work. You know, this fear of not good enough is actually, well, oh, this person is showing me appreciation and acknowledgement because I'm doing good work. Oh, I'll do more good work, and then we become addicted to that. You know, with these drip of stress, the stress doesn't go away. And like you say, it just compounds and builds up and builds up. But then, you know, work looks at you and says, oh, you're not coping very well. You're not resilient enough. Let's send you on some resilience training to make you actually tolerate more of this crap that you didn't like before. Yeah, so you go and do the training and they go, oh, you've been on the resilience training. Cool, great, fantastic. Let's shovel some more shit on this dude. And then you wonder why, but we're not taught that actually that initial drip was the same as sitting on a drawing pin. We're taught to ignore the little mental triggers that stop us from going, hold on a minute, this doesn't feel right. There's something wrong in my gut here. There's something else that's calling me forward. So we tune out of that. And actually that tuning out is what I now know in more recent years since writing this book is actually some of the symptoms of trauma. We stop being intuitive. We stop listening to our intuition. We don't trust ourselves. So when it's ourselves says, oh, that doesn't feel right, we learn to ignore it. Why? Because everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is clocking in at 9 o'clock. Everyone else is turning out 100 widgets an hour. Everyone else is happiness. I must be the problem. I can't trust myself.
So comparisons kill, right? I mean, we're comparing ourselves to the production of others around us when maybe what we're involved in isn't at all what we're meant to be doing.
Correct. And I can guarantee, and you look at it statistically, even when I wrote that book, and the statistics I got from 2016 and 2017 at the time of writing that book, they still hold true now. That individual that goes, I'm not happy in my role, oh, it must just be me. I can guarantee that about 87% of the other people that are looking around are thinking exactly the same thing, but everybody thinks everyone else is happy and that they must be the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't even realize that they've sat on the drawing pin at that point in time, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, and they just take another pin, another pin, another pin. And people need to understand and go back to trusting that intuition. If it doesn't feel right, you know, you have to do it, and you have to double check. Is it okay? Is it my inner critic stopping me from moving forward, or is it a genuine, you know, necessity to actually take a step forward? Okay, let's start trusting my intuition. Let's listen to what the inner voice has got to say.
What if we can't at all hear that voice anymore?
This is when we then start getting into the symptoms of things like PTSD. So one of the key factors I've learned in more recent, over the last year, is one of the first things to go when we look at PTSD is actually the loss of imagination. Because we can't perceive an alternative route out. We can't find an alternative to move us forward. And we get stuck in that thing, well, life can't get any better because I've experienced this, it looks like this, and I can't see a way forward. So therefore, the intuition, you can't be trusted. So we take the intuition away from you, says the subconscious, because you can't be trusted with it, so we're not going to give you. And then when you can't hear that voice at all, your imagination goes. So the bit that links back into the book itself And there's three things that we need in order to move forward. The first was we need inspiration. We need to be inspired from the inside out.
So
When you're,
listen to that voice and know that it's calling us forward and
yeah,
into expansion of
yeah,
self.
yeah. And that sometimes means, not even sometimes, I don't even know why I put that word in there. It absolutely means going back to the event that caused that to happen. It means going back to the traumatic event, and it means leaning into that.
That is
Because
really
then when,
scary.
hell yeah, but it's so necessary. You know, what is the phrase? You know, there is no around, there is only through. Yeah. So you have to go back to that moment and lean into it completely and fully. And what we call it rescuing kids. This is where we go now. Because all of us are trauma informed. All our lives have elements of trauma in it, you know, small or large, you know, whether it was the first thing or the last things your first girlfriend said to you when you were 12 years old that broke your heart. Yeah. Or whether it's the 82 car pile up on a Canadian highway, it doesn't matter. They still have a bearance in trauma, because trauma, as Gabor Mate says, isn't what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. It's that thing that changes you psychologically and physiologically that causes you to respond to future events in a past way. So when you get that thing where I can't hear my intuition, I can't hear my internal voice. Okay, actually, that's because something switched off. Let's go back to that moment. Let's change the narrative and rewire it. And then from there, like, well, actually, we can use some of the methodologies in that book and we can start questioning what happened. Okay, what was it? What did I do? What do I need more of? What's important to me? What was the gift in that moment? Anything like this. And we're using the questions to create then a new focus. So we lean into the trauma potentially in some of those bigger events. We shift the narrative, and then we start asking some of those core coaching questions to get a flavor of what the individual needs. This is inspiration. So this is internal dialogue. It's the internal fire that moves someone, which everyone has. Then once you have that, then you can fire up the imagination, because once you're inspired and the internal dialogue is, well, actually, what about this? And trying to it starts to kind of, it's the internal fuel, and it's an internal eternal fuel as well. What I break down as one of the things in the book is the difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is external, it's fleeting, it's finite. It's the double time overtime for working on a Sunday. It's the packet of sweets or a bottle of wine for doing a good job at the end of the month or whatever. Yeah. But it's anything that's outside of you. Internal is infinite. It's inside of you. So one of the prime examples I use of this is my daughter is motivation. She's outside of me. She's finite. Yeah. But inspiration, who I want to be in relation to my daughter, that's infinite. You can't take that away. Who I want to be in relation to her, how I want to show up in that relationship, that's inspiration. That inspires me to then step forward to be that person.
That calls you into an expansion of self to constantly be upgrading in order to provide for her in different ways that are even more useful and effective.
Exactly that. And whereas
we can do that with anything, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. And even if you use that example with a great point you bring in there, you know, is you look at people that are wanting more, a double time overtime or wanting bigger bonuses. They're not doing it for expansion. They're doing it because they want to fill their pockets. They're doing it for self, they're doing it for me, not the we. So when we look at that inspiration and we go, who am I in relation to this? Who am I in relation to this situation, this person? Who do I want to turn up to? Who do I want to bring to this conversation? That's internal, that's inspiration. When we do that though, and we're starting to use those coaching questions, we can then, it sparks our imagination.
Well, the interesting thing about inspiration, I think it's Les Brown. He says, I aspire to inspire until I expire. You, in viewing your journey, reading your book, you've inspired me, and that's come from within you.
Yeah.
And now that caused ripple effects. And now I aspire to inspire till I expire.
Yep, great. Thank you. Yeah, and this is if you look at how evolution works, yeah, we're here to lift other people up. We're here to raise children that will supersede us. You know, when we're in work or at home, it doesn't matter. Our role is, you know, I always say leadership and parenting are not two sides of the same coin. They're one and the same thing. When I'm at work and I'm leading a team, I treat those people like my children, not like a child. And I want those people in my team. I want them to supersede me. I want them to get promoted higher than me. I want them to get a bigger pay rise. I want them to go and run their own teams and spread that kind of parental pride when I see them do a great job, as I see my child when she takes her first steps.
So rather than managing and micromanaging, you're leading.
Yeah. And
That, in my opinion, is a perfect definition of what a leader is. Someone who isn't afraid that someone's going to do better than them, but they want to inspire them to actually do better than them.
Agree, and this is what's necessary. If you want organizations to flourish and teams to flourish, you need people that are willing to actually kind of open the gates, as it were, and let these people do what they need to do. But it's the same at home, you know. It's the same with the parenting. No parent in their right mind wants their child to be equal to or less than them. Simple as that.
Absolutely. Yeah. They want them to be better than, the best version of themselves in order to accomplish that. And
then this is the challenge. This is the challenge, and this is when you framed the challenge beautifully. And what you do, you want them to be better than. I don't want my child to be better than me, because I made this mistake in leadership. I want her to be the best her. Because what we see in kind of modern parenting and modern leadership, and we're starting to see this through trauma, is my parents experienced a trauma. They have no idea how to process that stuff. They then pass that on to me as ancestral trauma, and through repression of not wanting to express their emotions and so on and so forth. Now, if I don't start leaning into what was done to me as a child and what was not done to me as a child, and start being honest with that, about that in my own subconscious, and I repress that, I then give that to my child. What you were saying is they want to be better them, is actually, if you listen to people and they start giving you parenting advice. So you have a child, you've got children, you've got grandchildren now, yeah? And you know, when someone gave you parental advice about your children, maybe your first child, and then you didn't do what they suggested, how offended did that person become? Very. Very. Why? Because their version of parenting is very personal to them. And if you say no to that, what you're then doing is saying that actually they're a bad parent. That's how they see it subconsciously. So when we look at this, I want my child to be a better them. When we get caught in this flow, what we want to do is our children to be a slightly better version of us, but not too much that it makes us feel uncomfortable. And they want them to repeat what was done to us, so that we don't have to acknowledge what was done to us in the first type space. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that's very sick, repetitive cycle that can go on for centuries.
Yeah. And then what happens? The child goes, oh, okay, I can do that. So the child's now in a trauma experience by the parental race.
Yeah, programmed from birth to be traumatized.
Yeah. And so therefore I repeat what was done to me to my child, because then I'm being seen as a good child. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm also seeking validation from the parent, but I can only do it in an incremental step, maybe maximum 2.5%, which is probably about the cost of living increase that most people see in their salaries, which never matches the cost of living at all. Mm. But we see these increments, but we can't make too big a shift in case we upset the parent, and the parent's only getting upset because actually what that's doing is showing them the trauma that they had inflicted upon them, and they don't want to deal with it at that point.
Yeah, self-awareness is such a difficult thing to navigate through, for sure.
Yeah. But it's so when we sit in that though, we need as parents, and I think it's starting to happen the same with the leadership thing, to be open enough to say, do you know what, our children are going to do things differently, and I'm going to give this child as much space as I can do, and to facilitate a space where I hold a container for them to learn their lessons. That they learn the lessons with their parenting, that we step back and let them make those choices as well.
There's this beautiful quote that states, if a flower doesn't blossom, you don't fix the flower, you fix the environment in which the flower resides, and watch it grow and blossom. So especially with children and as a leader, what are some things that we can do as parents or leaders in order to create a better environment for those we're leading, or those we love?
One is ask more questions. The human brain is powered by questions. It's a validation machine. It's a pattern seeking, meaning seeking, questioning machine. That's all it's doing. So that when we sit down with our children, or we sit down with our with people in our teams, I ask this in when I'm delivering trainings: who here likes being told what to do? And 99% of the time, no one says me.
But yet we live our entire lives being told what to do,
and
seeking
then
validation.
Yeah, you're seeking validation. Oh, tell me what to do. I'll do it. Therefore, I get seen. Okay, but that's not how it works. I'm doing what you're telling me to do. Maybe that doesn't fit in my world. Yeah, and it's the same with our children. We tell them what to do. We give them instructions, and at certain points we need to do that because it's imperative for safety and stuff like that. Okay, I get that. In the majority, though, actually, we can start having open, flowing conversations. Not pretending, let's not pretend that the moment when we do this as human beings as well, is the moment a child speaks as human beings, we automatically, oh, they speak, therefore they must understand what I'm saying. It doesn't work like that. Maybe they're 3 years old and they just started speaking. They haven't got a fully formed brain yet, let alone a fully formed sentence. But we then project this onto them. But is actually, as a child evolves, is just ask more questions. Find out how they're feeling, understand that actually they don't have names and understandings of certain things or what their emotions are. Kids have big emotions, and the emotions are big because they don't have a fully formed brain to process what's actually happening. So
many times no way to express how they're feeling or the ability to ask questions because they're dumbed down and they're told, don't ask questions, don't question authority, just be the way I want you to be, fit in this box no matter what, or else.
Correct. And we start doing that to children at a very young age in the majority. So then actually when you move into leadership positions and you've got a team, say, of maybe 22-year-olds or 23-year-olds in a young sales environment, let's bear in mind that their brain isn't fully formed. Their brain hasn't even come fully online yet. It doesn't come online until 24. But then if they've been told to kind of dumb down, play safe, and they don't know how to actually express their emotions, do you think when they get to 22 and they're in a sales team that they're going to be able to express themselves properly? No. So actually, as a leader, we need to start asking more questions and say, okay, what's happening here? What's coming up? What are the emotions? How does this feel? And then we need to be aware as a leader and as a parent, as we do this for our children, as we do this for people in our teams, that it's going to bring stuff up for us because no one else did it for us. And as it brings that stuff, we then have to go and honor those feelings and those emotions, and we have to go through our own processes, our own therapy, our own coaching, whatever it is, in order to go back to those moments so we can lean into that stuff. And then we can role model to the people around us and people in our teams, in our businesses, in our family, what it's like to actually go and do the work, how it's beneficial, so that we know as parents, there's going to be things that we do that are going to, in the nicest possible way, fuck our kids up. Yeah, we're going to make mistakes along the way. Let's not be, and we do that all the time.
And that's okay.
And it is. And as long as we can consciously hold our hands up and say, do you know what? I made a mistake. And I say this to my daughter, she's 8.5, and I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to need your support. And when you're ready to talk about this, in the future, I will be here and I'll have that conversation with you. But she's seeing me go through the therapy work and doing the therapy work for other people. So she knows there's already kind of, there's an okayness and enoughness with doing this.
I love that.
So that she can go and do the work and she can come back to me and do it. And then as leaders, which is harder in the business space, we show our teams how to do it. And then we also let them know, okay, how they do it for themselves, and let them know that it's not weakness and it's necessary and it's needed. So that when they need to do it, because when I was working in sales teams, I was having conversations with some of those people that their parents should have definitely been having with them. And I was the one that was left kind of holding the reins on that one.
Good.
Yeah, it is good. But at the same time, there's a level of pissed offness in me that I'm now got a team of, 15 people, and I'm having conversations which their dad should have had with them when they were 10, and better late than never. At the same time, though, we need to be able to show that this is how we have a conversation, and these people can have the conversation themselves.
Truly. And until we know better, we really can't do better, and with children, especially, it's interesting. And this absolutely applies to a leadership role. But with children, they wait for us to do what we say we're going to do. And that builds trust and credibility within them. And then they know, okay, this is someone I can trust. We earn credibility through applying what we said we're going to do and making that happen. And as a leader, I mean, if you've got a leader that tells you one thing and does another, all trust is lost. It's broken. No credibility whatsoever.
Yeah. So when I look at childhood trauma stuff, which is where I've moved into over the last 12 months, is for me, a child needs three things. They need to feel safe, certain, and loved.
Safe. What was the second one?
Safe, certain, and love.
Mm-hmm.
So like that certainty becomes like a sense of security. Yeah. You know, they need to feel safe emotionally, physically. They need to be certain of things, that there's kind of some regularity of what's going on, and that security, and then that sense of love, that they are loved, loving, and lovable, as my teacher puts it.
How do we upgrade the environment for not just our children, but the people around us?
Yeah, so the
so
first
that they
thing
feel
is always,
safe.
Yeah, the first thing is internally. Because if I don't feel safe in me, or I feel safe that, you know, others can be around me, I'm going to start, you know, projecting that shit all over everyone else.
Nice. That's deep. I like that.
Yeah.
So self-work leads to contribution.
Yeah, it's got to be this way. So if I look at kind of, if you need those three things, and you've got, say, a child who, or let's say a child, you know, has experienced traumatic event, they then come into a workspace. Yeah. We just see the pattern repeating. And more often than not, we see the wounded child going into a workspace, and they end up with a leader or manager that is just an echo of what happened with the parent or not. So as you say, they're coming in here, and I want to see that this person follows through on what they're saying, and I want to know that I can trust them. But if I'm already coming into the dialogue, preloading it with a judgment of how I was treated when I was 5 years old, I'm now going to be behaving in a certain kind of way here, which is going to encourage a repetition of the event that happened over here. And then, you know, I'm trying not to, but I'm doing it subconsciously because I'm not awake. So I say certain things or do certain things. And then when that person responds or reacts in a similar way to that, I can then just say, oh, I told you so. That's life. That's normal. Because what I do is I habitualize and repeat. I repeat and habitualize the event over and over and over and over again. And that way it means that I can say, well, that thing that happened to me when I was 5 years old, that's normal. That's how life is. And it's not so bad. So I can use that as the excuse to not go back to that point, because that's just how life is. And then so you end up with you end up with 5-year-olds wrapped up in 55-year-old bodies.
Yeah, we're all children.
And we're all children, but it's just our language became more complex. You know, the level of excuse we use became more detailed. So people kind of got more tricky with it. The ego got more tricky with it. Mm-hmm. But when we can like kind of break that down, and as a leader, as a parent, when we start to see the 5-year-old turning up at work, we can then speak to the 5-year-old. We don't speak to the person like a 5-year-old. We can speak to the 5-year-old. We can speak to the root cause of the pain.
Brilliant.
And it encouraged that individual to then go and get the work. Why? Because I'm doing the work. When I talk about my addictive behaviors, if I talk about drug abuse, if I talk about violent activities that have taken place in my life, or hospitalizations. Now, when I speak to people about eating disorders, drug abuse, emotional abuse, you know, all the, you know, I do it because I've done it. And I'm doing some of that work. And even when I wrote, you know, Stop Working, Start Living, I'd already started doing some of that work. But even now, at a much deeper level, it's like, well, actually, there's a truth in here, and these are the mechanics of it, and you can start doing it, which gives you the pragmatic building blocks in order to say, okay, I want to move from this. And when people look at me, they see I'm the role model for it because I'm doing the work.
Watching your journey from afar, thanks to social media, which is a blessing for me personally because of who I intentionally choose to follow. I've really enjoyed seeing your personal journey and all of your upgrades in your personal life and what you've expanded into. You know, life traumatizes all of us, but it's up to us how long we're going to remain a victim. And the self-awareness and the quality of questions is huge. And in this book, there are a lot of questions that made me more self-aware, made me think like, hey, what can I do better in order to upgrade my skills and acquire new attributes and beliefs and perspectives and upgrade all the time, unlimitlessly, right? No limits are necessary in any way. Napoleon Hill said, you know, within every failure or trauma, there is the seed of unlimitless success that's attached to that trauma. It's what we learn and become in our acquired abilities to deal with and heal through that trauma that makes us the who we are as humans, and then results in a life well lived and success and abundance in every area of life. And you're a great example of abundance in every area of life. That's why I love following you on social media. I love to learn from you. I love to share your teachings, and I love to implement them. So keep doing what you're doing, man. You're making a huge impact in many people's lives. You really are.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's brilliant. Um, Now, people seeing where you're at now may sort of put you on a pedestal, or see you through a rose-colored lens. But let's take the pedestal away. Let's remove the glasses and the lenses and all the preconceived notions, and go back to your childhood, and where you were programmed to become what you were when you became really pissed off. And then if you could explain to us what you learned from that, and the who you became as this human form, and what you did, what was most helpful in order to get to the place where you're at now.
Yeah. And I'm going to have to jump backwards and forwards in the timeline, because there's new understandings and new realizations that have come up in my awareness over the last 12 months of the inner work as well.
Good.
So one of the first major events was being hospitalized when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So I'd lived a fairly normal life. I'd grown up in the 80s, no austerity. My parents had been exposed to huge economic downturns. I think at one point their mortgage was like 20% or something crazy. No, huge austerity cuts there. You know, it was a proper recession. It was a recession where people don't go on holiday like they did in 2008, you know. So we had all this. And then as I then grew up, 8 or 9, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So inflammation of the gut. It was a routine. I had an abdominal pain, routine operation, routine outcome, remove an appendix. They didn't see the other symptoms. And I then was in and out of hospital for nearly a year, having multiple operations and all sorts of things happening to me. So at a very early age, experiencing this trauma and pain. But then what came out of that is, over the course of 2-3 years, with my mum doing all the research, because we didn't have the internet then, you know, in public domain, it was like doing huge amounts of research, actually cured it. Actually cured my Crohn's disease. We treated it for something else, and I've never had a symptom or a flare up, as they call it, of those symptoms since.
So those of us who aren't really aware of exactly what Crohn's is, you explained it as inflammation of the gut. What were the symptoms, and what did you do to cure it?
Yeah, so perforated appendicitis is one of the key symptoms, because it's an inflammation at the ileocecal valve, which is near where the appendix is, where the small intestine and the large intestine join. So you see huge amounts of inflammation, but you also get a blistering effect on the inside of it as well. So you get kind of watery, toxic plasma, kind of pustulosa type stuff. And those things burst, and they kind of then heal to other stuff, and it becomes really, really aggravated. Major abdominal pain, you're passing blood, diarrhea, full works. You know, it's excruciating agony. But what, you know, and I did, and I had 15 inches of my intestines resectioned. I had a huge abscess on it. One of my kidneys deflated. I had pipes in my jugular vein, up my nose, all sorts of craziness at the age of 9 years old. Mum did a load of research on it. We went and spoke to a homeopath, and we treated it. We did all the allopathic route, and then we treated it naturally with homeopathy and reflexology and purely through diet. So we went a slightly different route, and we actually treated it for a gut flora imbalance with candida. So similarly to thrush, but an internal yeast infection. Treated that over an extended period of time of 2 years. And then since then, I've never had a flare up since.
Because you've adhered to a proper nutrition plan, I'm guessing.
Inside of that time. So once you rebalance the gut health, you can actually go back to a fairly normal diet afterwards anyway. But you just have to be conscious and aware of what your body's telling you. Again, that intuition piece, what your body's telling you, not telling you. Okay, is this good for me? Is this healthy for me? Okay, maybe I won't go to Kentucky Fried Chicken every night for dinner if it's giving me an upset stomach. You know, you put nasty shit in, you get nasty shit out, quite literally. So it's just looking at that and making the lifestyle choices.
Hats off to your mom, by the way. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And all she had was the health food shop. I mean, like I say, we didn't have the internet there. You know, she had a health food shop with some kind of reference points and people to speak to.
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly that. So amazing work. So that was kind of my, just coming into kind of the tween age years. And then when I got to school, I really struggled in school because I still felt like the weirdo. I was still the odd kid out. You know, I was the artistic one, but I was taller than everyone else. I'm like a foot taller than everyone else at school.
What was your
Um,
self-image back then? How did you self-identify?
I difficulty. No, as I was kind of going into the teenage years, my brother was the toughest kid in school. You know, he was the good-looking, tough kid. All the girls wanted to be with him. All the guys wanted to hang out with him. So I kind of almost had this role model that I was trying to play up to. This I had to be this kind of big guy. You
A lot of
know,
comparisons going on. Huh?
yeah, a lot of comparisons. But I wasn't. I don't think I was a good-looking kid, to be honest. I don't think I was. I think I've actually got better looking with age than I was when I was. I look at than that.
I wish I could say the same.
But I always felt like the odd kid out. I felt like an outsider, and I always felt like an outsider, mostly because of my size. And people also looked up to me because of my size, that I was going to sort problems out in the playground. I had to be the tough one, and I didn't always want to be the tough one. And lots of different things. And then being sick and going into secondary school, kind of college, high school, I think you would call it in America, and having been sick and feeling frail and vulnerable, didn't really fit this persona. Like A, being the old kid, B, feeling frail and vulnerable, and C, I'm supposed to be like, have this role model of being the tough guy's little brother, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's a complete mismatch of what I thought I needed to be or what I thought I should be based on what I thought other people thought of me and all this. So it was already happening there. And I never felt like I fitted into any social group. I was kind of always sitting on the edges of lots of different social groups. That's how it felt. And then the bullying started. And it was with a group of guys from another school. When I was walking home, and they were a couple of years older than me, and me being taller, I think maybe they thought I was the same age as them. And they started picking on me. And that felt like it went on for months, like months and months. And it just, yeah, absolutely broke me. It was terrifying going home. I couldn't tell my brother because he was the toughest kid in school. And let me put toughest kid in, I say this with a wry smile, like, let me put toughest kid in the school into context. He was the kid that got expelled from school for fighting with the principal. Yeah, he wasn't just fighting other kids, he was fighting with the adults in the school as well.
Like physically?
Like physically, yeah, that's where he got removed from the school for having a physical altercation with the headmaster.
So we had some stuff going on internally, obviously.
He had his stuff going on as well. But, you know, I couldn't tell him because then I would feel like less of a man at 13 for not being able to defend myself against 4 or 5 other guys. Yeah. My father was a police officer at the time. And again, I felt I couldn't tell him because he was a policeman, and there's kind of like a sense of, a sense of derision against police officers. And still at this time, or especially at that time, to be related to a policeman, especially, wasn't a cool thing.
Knowing what you know now, how would you go back and deal with that entire situation differently?
Going back and dealing with it differently is it then comes to that language of challenge. One is I ran away from the situation. I didn't lean into it. I didn't challenge myself to step up. I didn't challenge myself to break what I thought was socially acceptable or was the so-called social norm. There's a part of me now that would have preferred to have actually stood up to all 4 or 5 of that. I think it was 4 or 5 people there, and gone home with a black eye, rather than shy away from it. And all those things, and I would have found different ways to actually voice what was happening, because what was happening wasn't okay. And for me to come there with a misguided and mal-educated kind of sense of what makes a man at 13, I'm basing that on what I think other 13-year-olds think, and what a man is in floating speech marks. It's completely warped. It's not the reality.
What you did then was perfect, and certainly something that I did repeatedly at the same age. And no judgment. And I'm just curious, as an adult, as in a different mind place, what you would have done, going backwards. And that's always fun to contemplate and think about. But that's a scary situation for any kid to be in. It really is.
Agreed.
And the chemical cascade that the brain injects into the bloodstream, and then bam, fight or flight. And then pretty soon that's your emotional norm. And that sucks to be in that place.
Yeah, and the bit that really got me about it was I went and then did a mentoring program through the business. I was standing there talking in front of 150 13, 14-year-olds and a load of adults. First time I've ever done public speaking, terrifying. And I don't even know what possessed me. I put my hand up and stood up and ended up speaking in front of these kids. And at the end of it, and I can't remember this boy's name, I see his face. He's the tallest guy in the room.
Mhm.
And he says to me, thanks for saying what you said to me. I'm experiencing exactly the same thing. So this is when I'm 37, and that happened to me when I was 13.
That's
and
why
this
you got up.
Yeah, and then the 13-year-old comes up to me and says, and I was absolutely, I said, look, you know, it's not okay. You need to talk about this. You need to kind of stand your ground. You need to get people involved, so on and so forth. Yeah, for sure. That's why I got up. But the heartbreak for me, Pete, was the fact that I'm standing up, you know, 15 years later, 16 years later, and it's still happening. And it's still happening to some other boy in the same experience. And fingers crossed, you know, me sharing one pearl or nugget of wisdom with him has enabled him to go in a different direction than I did. At the same time, it still breaks my heart to hear it's continuing to happen, you know.
Yeah, the direction that you went in is very interesting. It was a little devastating to read. It broke my heart.
Yeah. And this, and this is, you know, because I bottled it up, I held on to it because I didn't know what to do with it. Because then I understood, you know, as I understood it now in retrospect, hurt people. And I think it's Dr. Sandra Wilson who says that, you know, he says hurt people. Why? Because we don't know what to do with it. We get this overflow. We get someone fills up our trash can, someone fills up our cup with all of their shit and all of their hurt and their pain. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? Oh, okay. I'll become a bully because that's what happened to me. So we then perpetuate the cycle. It makes me feel slightly better about this cup of whatever it is I'm holding, which is spilling all over the place. And I'll go and do that to other people so that it makes sure that I stay on top of the pecking order, so that the people that maybe were pecking me might leave me alone or can see that actually this kid's got something going on here. Maybe we'll leave him alone now because we can see how violent he is now. And they back away.
So the payoff then, what was the payoff in becoming a bully?
That people saw me as the violent kid. People saw me as having an anger problem.
People leave you alone that way, huh?
They'd leave me alone in some sense, but you know, some of them potentially would also try and wind me up to try and get that reaction out of me.
So you're controllable in your seeking of significance.
Yeah, so I'm becoming controllable by other people because they think they can play a certain kind of game with me. But I'm all in drama. I'm all in a space of drama at this point. So I become a bully. I start to fail in school because school really wasn't working for me. I didn't fit it. It didn't fit me. The dynamics didn't work for me, never have done. I became a bully. Then I started to use drugs at that point in time. Now, I have a very different viewpoint on some of those technologies and some of those medicines now because of the work and the journey that I've been on. But I was doing it purely to get out of my head. I didn't want to be present with that. So I was using it as an anesthetic because it was a fairly socially acceptable mechanism, you know, to use some of those in the social groups we're hanging out. Okay, yeah, it was illegal and it's still illegal in certain usages, but I was using it in order to just support me not having to process that stuff. So I might as well have dropped out of school. I managed to get my grades, but they weren't fantastic. I had some kind of fairly average jobs, got my first management job when I was 19 for all the wrong reasons, and met a wonderful woman, a girl at the time, due to certain things, and I spent 2 years with her, and we were then due to fly around the world together. Now, I knew that this is the woman that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. The first day that I woke up next to this lady, I knew that this is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Hands down, categorically knew she's the one. So we're together for 2 years. We buy round the world tickets to fly around the world together. Southeast Asia, Australia, 15 to 18 months, you know, big, like life-changing, life-affirming kind of journey together. And then 6 weeks before we're due to fly, she finishes the relationship and said, I can't go with you. Which completely blew my brain. Like, it was completely unexpected. This is the woman I'm going to marry. I know this. I haven't necessarily told her that because that's not the sort of thing you say to every woman, like when you first meet them. Yeah. Yeah. And so I went go through this process. And so I went traveling, very different person on my own, kind of lot of kind of challenging experiences, 15 months abroad. I came back, but I fell straight back into the same old patterns, the drug use, hanging out with certain friends, but the intensity increased because I'd been away and experienced maybe even a little bit of who I am and wasn't in relation to them, or tested out some new versions of me. When I came back, I fell straight back into those old patterns, but those patterns intensified and the quantities intensified. So within the space of 8 months, at the end of the 8 months, I overdosed on recreational drugs. There's no other way to put, to say, my tolerance level had increased and ramped up to such a point I was able to kind of physically cope with quite a lot.
Why do you think that that intensified at that time in your life? Was it like repressed anger, emotions? It's something you experienced?
All of that, because I've been traveling and kind of playing with different personas, but dropping different elements of me, was able to be a little bit more freer and didn't have people around me that were playing my audience. It's like, again, it comes back to that expectation, that there was this expectation that Nathan is going to behave like this in these sorts of environments with this sort of people, and he's going to do these sorts of things. Now you take all that away, actually, who do I want to be? Okay, I can test out what I know, I can talk about that, I can share whatever it is. But then the moment you kind of drop me back in with that audience, it's like, well, this is who I was over here. Now I've been away potentially. I'm thinking this as I'm saying this as I'm thinking it. I've come back. It's almost like I've been away in training. Okay, who else can I be and what level can I go to? But I've experienced all these wonderful things over here of possibility. And what possibility led me back to? Exactly the same place, doing exactly the same thing. So it's just like, well, fuck, now I have to take even more of those things to anesthetize all the good stuff that potentially I did experience while I was away. So we end up doing more and more and more and more and more. So it got to the end of the 8 months, and I took a substantial amount of ecstasy and cocaine that would probably kill most people. But psychologically and physiologically, I snapped at that point. And had to do some serious kind of readdressing of who I am in relation to a lot of different people, different relationships, how I'm in relation to myself. And it wasn't the be all and end all, it wasn't the pivotal moment, but it was a stepping back moment, which enabled my psyche to tear apart. And in an unheld container, like an unfacilitated container, for me to make a decision, okay, this person is no longer in my life, neither is this one, I'm not doing this, I'm doing this, okay, what does that look like? And then just change the landscape. But again, because I didn't do it in a held container, thankfully I had some kind of skills and wherewithal of what I could do to make it work. I was able to piece some of those pieces back together, but it took me probably 15 years to bring all that stuff back in from that experience.
After that incident?
After that incident. And so, there were still things that dropped in and dropped out, through that journey as well.
Oh, sure. Life happens.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of people that I know and love who are currently addicted or trying to recover from different kinds of drugs. And from what I've heard you saying, inner healing, inner acceptance, inner appreciation, inner love, those are the things that will eventually lead to working through the trauma they experienced that led them to seek solutions to get out of their heads.
Yep.
And to deal with it the best way they can. And like we said, until you know better, you can't really do better. What advice would you give to someone who's just going through hell and they feel hopeless and alone, totally discouraged, even suicidal, and they're turning to drugs for their solution right now?
I think Marianne Faithfull said, if it wasn't for heroin, she'd be dead. That's something I paraphrase, yeah. But the truth is that there is a part of your psyche, there's a part of your subconscious that loves you so much that it encourages you to take drugs and alcohol. Because it doesn't want to see you have the heartache and the pain that went with whatever happened. Because it still thinks that you're 5 years old, it still thinks that you're 10 years old. So it goes, okay, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to cope with this right now. We're going to put a coping strategy in. And that coping strategy could be anything from heroin, ecstasy, cocaine, overworking, sexually, dangerous sexual activity, whatever. There's a coping strategies. So that if we feel that, we don't have to feel this.
That wasn't what I was expecting. That hit me really hard.
Yeah, good, because it's meant to, with absolute love and respect, Pete, and you know that, yeah. There's that part of you, because the moment that we start trying to push those parts of us away, the moment I start trying to put this addict away, the sexual, the push, it's me resisting. But what I'm actually pushing away is the 5-year-old that needs my attention. So then when we look at that and we go, okay, and we stop looking at ourselves as the problem. We come back to the inspiration thing. One of those key quotes I put in that book, it's my language, not anyone else's. Everything in you, about you, and around you is a solution to a problem.
So we're not the problem, we are the solution.
We are a solution. Evolution made us that way.
Re-identify.
Yeah, and then what happens is, if we stop looking at ourselves as a problem, if we stop looking at the addiction as a problem, we stop resisting. Oh shit, well, maybe I am loved, and maybe I am loving and lovable.
Wow.
Okay, cool.
What we resist persists. And I love how you just explained how to let it go by accepting the self as is, as beautiful and perfect and whole.
Yeah. And this is the part, for me, it's not necessarily about letting go, because that part of your ego that comes in, what we call it the protector, it steps in to kind of stop you from getting hurt and creates all these habits and behaviors. Now, that's part of your ego. You can't live without your ego. Your ego is really necessary. But all the time that we're pushing apart, this part of your ego still thinks you're 5 years old, doesn't know that you've grown up. But then when you go and reintroduce yourself to this part of your ego, you can then renegotiate how it's going to behave and how it's going to do certain things and how it can then support you. So you can then change the behaviors. So rather than, the first part in that is, and was it Johan Hari in his book, The Lost Connections, he says, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. So the moment that you can connect, firstly, to yourself, that alignment piece again, and you come back to it. Okay, I'm going to connect to me. I'm going to connect to all the parts of me, the lost parts. And I'm going to bring some of those parts home. And when I talk to clients, I say it's like defragging your old school hard drives. We don't have it on the new laptops. Remember when you used to defrag your hard drive once a month?
It would work
and
better.
You're bringing, yeah. And you bring all those parts in. But our psyche, where we have those pivotal moments and we push the little inner children out, and we push the behaviors away, oh, that's not socially acceptable, we push all those folders out. And when we push so many of them out and we get to breaking point, that's when we look at serious mental kind of diagnosis, mental health diagnosis, like psychosis and OCD and all those things. It's because we push too many of those parts out. But when I'm doing the hypnotherapy work, the inner child work with people, it's like defragging your hard drive. You're going out and you're collecting those inner children and you're walking those inner children home and rewiring how your brain works. You're reconnecting to yourself. So as an addict or someone who's going through severe, it's like understand that, okay, the addiction there is a tool, it's a mechanism. It's not who I am. It's a tool that I am using in order to self-anesthetize and support myself in this current fucking crisis. So then when we start to bring the inner children home and we renegotiate with the saboteur, the protector that's gone AWOL and is now sabotaging life, we can renegotiate some of those behaviors. We start walking some of those parts home. We start defragging our hard drive. And although we're whole and complete, it's just the hard drive's a little bit messy. And we just need to bring those parts back home and reconnect with us. Then we can reconnect to other people. Then we can reconnect to our purpose and to the people around us and our work and nature and all of those things. And I'm not saying I'm not saying you have to do one in order to get to the other. You can reconnect with nature, which helps you to reconnect yourself. You can reconnect with other people, which help you to reconnect to yourself. Now, all roads lead to Rome. But the first point is rather than you resisting and pushing you away, that's not going to help you. One of my teachers said, the oak tree doesn't give the acorn a hard time for being an acorn or for being less of an oak tree. Yeah, we're all on our journeys at different points, and whether we choose to get on or off the train is absolutely up to us as an individual. And the train, there will always be another train going past that we can get onto to keep going on our journey to progress. But all the time that we're resisting and kind of saying, I'm a bad person for doing this, it will stop us from getting on the train and continuing the journey.
So self-judgment, self-criticism, self-incrimination, and a poor self-image that was programmed into us from a very young age through our misperceptions of what well-meaning, loving parents were trying to teach us, then becomes our job later in life. And it's almost like a process of unbecoming everything that we thought we were supposed to be to please everyone and make everyone happy, and listening to the inner voice, turning inside, deciding what we want, focusing on that, and healing through that process. And it takes sometimes decades or even a lifelong process is in store. And for me, I love the fact that I can upgrade and heal trauma and empower others to do that as well. Through having guests like you on this show. You've been through different things than I have, and everyone's got their own story. And for all of us to be able to reach out and connect with others in order to heal our inner trauma, and then focus on our why and our purpose. And that's, to me, alignment.
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
And picking up on something you said there, it's not necessarily that all our parents are well-meaning, loving parents. Some of them are just fundamentally flawed, and and some of them even know that they're fucked up and they're fuck-ups,
Yeah.
and they do this. They afflict and inflict all sorts of stuff onto their kids, knowingly, unknowingly, whatever. They just don't process.
Guilty.
Yeah. and some of us, is we see it happening and we want to play it out, and like I say, we give it to our kids in different ways. But as parents, if we can stand up and hold our hands up and say, okay, actually, I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, as a parent, it's not my job to fix my child or fix my parents. It's my job to fix me. So I can, again, create that environment around us, which inspires our kids to fix, and maybe our parents do. But if they don't, that's also okay. We just do our journey, they do their journey. I'm good. And then that other word you use is kind of that judgment, that self-judgment. And the important thing is, the moment you judge someone, you cannot influence them. So if I think you're an idiot, I treat you like an idiot. Yeah. And eventually, if I treat you like an idiot for long enough, you'll behave like an idiot.
That's an energy exchange. People feel that. Yeah.
But, if I'm working with you and I think you're an idiot, I treat you like an idiot. I'm not going to ask you questions to encourage you to be anything different. Why? Because my brain, I'm a validation-seeking machine. I think you're an idiot, therefore I'm going to do everything I can to prove myself right, because that makes me superior in this situation. And then eventually you go, okay, do you know what? You think I'm an idiot, I might as well act one. Where do I get the bow tie from? The spinning bow tie and the big shoe. So is that, but we do it to ourselves. We don't realize that we're judging ourselves, because it's the internal mind chatter. If we turn around and suddenly say, actually, when I say to these people, and this one is one of the most triggering questions I ask, and say, oh yeah, but I think I can't do this. Oh, I think I'm not capable of this. Da, 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 da. And the question I ask them is, whose voice is that? And I'll say, yeah, but it's mine. I said, is it really? Who told you this? Who do you remember telling you this the first time? And they'll say, oh, it's my mum. Oh, it's my dad. Oh, it's my two. Oh, okay, cool. Is it the truth? Is it fact or is it fiction? And that starts to break people, even just by doing that sort of question. Like, well, actually, this thing happened where you heard that, and you've learned that, you've heard it repeated, and you've learned that behavior, and that's now repressed your full expression of who you are, which then means that's potentially turned into addictive behaviors, or to normalize that moment that actually you didn't feel loved because someone told you you weren't good enough to do something, which then starts to play out in different ways. So the moment you can start to hear that voice, when it's a voice of doubt, uncertainty, or criticism, or judgment, it's not your voice. That's the voice of someone else that told you that in order to try and keep you safe, based on their map of the world, based on the trauma that was inflicted on them, which they then inflicted on you by osmosis, more than anything. We know with goodwill and intention.
Well, yeah, good intention. Well-meaning, though it may have been. I think it is Dr. Bruce Lipton. He teaches how most children are programmed within the first 7 years in a certain brainwave pattern. And then right around 7 years old, it cuts off, it stops. And we use that subconscious programming then to create the entire rest of our life. We live off the programs that were installed. Are there any ways that you know of that we can reprogram the subconscious, get rid of old programs and install new ones in order to create an up-leveled and more beautiful personal reality?
Yeah, there's several ways, and I've self-experimented with a few of them. One of them, we can use psychedelic technologies and entheogens. So we'll be looking at plant medicines and psychoactive compounds. They are some of the fastest routes to create neuroplasticity, especially with psilocybin mushrooms, depending on how you're doing it in the container. And it's not, and I'm not an advocate or advocating or promoting that people go, oh shit, I'm going to go and buy some of this and just take, no. There's a level of reverence and respect and legality that goes with these technologies as well. They have benefits to them. John Hopkins is doing studies with MDMA on PTSD, and psilocybin, and Imperial College in London as well, doing tests with psilocybin on untreatable depression, etc. So there's phenomenal work going on. But that's not, but from everything from ayahuasca through to iboga as well for breaking addictions and processing trauma. So that's one aspect that is definitely worth having an exploratory into for many people. It's not for everyone. It's worth investigating to see what comes out of any research and outcomes. The other part is is then looking at kind of the subconscious work when we look at the hypnotherapy. So the work that I now do, so when I wrote Stop Working, Start Living, I was purely leadership career coaching at this point in time. And through my journey, through my progress of challenging myself to lean into my own traumas, to lean in my own pain, and living the words that I wrote in that book to help me get out of that situation. I then trained in hypnotherapy last year. So when we do the hypnotherapy to rewire those, so we go back and have conversations with those parts of your brain. We can separate your brain into kind of different. Your brain is phenomenally powerful, and it's made of hundreds and thousands of archetypes and personalities and different ways of being. So your brain contains all the different personality types there are. Everything: male, female, old, young, burglar. You know, the thief, the lover, the cook. You've got all of those things in there. Yeah, it's all in there. But it's, you know, there's a part of you which is Pete Jones, or a part of your soul that represents as Pete Jones at this point in time. And you bring on different parts of your personality based on how you were raised and the experience you got. That part of your personality, part of it's ingrained, and part of it you're also playing out in who you are now. We have choices in what attributes we want to demonstrate. So what we can do is we can go in and we can have different conversations with different parts of you that are bringing those parts of your psyche, your personality to bear. And we can then just shift the narrative. We can change that narrative and kind of go, well, actually, this thing isn't helping us anymore. And no, thanks very much for all the hard work that you've been doing to keep us alive. It's really appreciated. How would you like to change that? What would you like to do differently right now? And we can then embed some of those things at a subconscious level in order for the person to change their habits and behaviors.
What kinds of changes have you seen in people you've worked with that have gone through this?
So it varies with people. I know some of the people I'm working with, but they start with one conversation like, well, I'm struggling in my business. Oh, okay, cool. And I know they're not struggling in their business. They're struggling with something which is causing them to struggle with their business. Yeah, I know this because I've lived it. So we end up having a conversation. It's actually, okay, I'm procrastinating and I want to move forward. Well, okay, well, I know what procrastination is. Procrastination is a trauma response. You know, it's a safety mechanism which we've been using for hundreds of thousands of years to keep us in the cave. Do you need to go and pick berries? Because if you go outside, you might get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. And that's called, like, that's procrastination, is kind of second guessing. Do I want to do this or not? So they say it's procrastination. Okay, that's a trauma response. Okay, so what's going on? Let's go and have a conversation. We end up having the conversation and we end up going back and rescuing the 4-year-old. Why? Because they feel like they don't belong. Oh, so what you're telling me is you feel like you don't belong. How's that playing out in your business? Oh. And they start to see that actually their business is struggling because there's a part of them that's felt like since they were 4 years old that didn't belong. So we start to reprogram and rewire some of that stuff. So actually, we bring the 4-year-old back online. We bring the belonging back online, which then means actually they're more wholeheartedly present in their work, which then means they can do that. But then as we bring the younger version of them online, other younger versions start bubbling to the surface because they want to be heard and seen from the moments that they've experienced, other moments in their life, which then means that conversations with family members become stronger. Conversations with their children who are of similar ages when those events happen become stronger. So we just see these changes in things like, well, actually, I had this conversation with so-and-so and I didn't think, oh, and when this person behaved like this to me, rather than me react from anger, I actually acted from a place of curiosity because I wanted to find out what their perspective was, because I realized that their perspective is their perception. It's not the reality of who I am, but I've been reacting to their version of reality in order to play the game they're asking me to play. So we just we go back and we kind of start letting these younger versions come to the surface, so that people can feel more whole and complete, and then they can choose to respond rather than react to things. And we just see relationships change, because when you change the relationship internally, the relationships externally shift. So the business gets better, the relationship with children get better, the conversation they're having with themselves get better. The ideas start to come, thicker and faster because we changed. One client, she was in the belief that a teacher told her she was average when she was 13. So I went back to the event with her, and she went back to the event. She looked at it and she went, hold on, the teacher didn't, and she's saying this out loud to me while she's in hypnosis. The teacher didn't say I was average. The teacher said the grade was average. But I've lived my whole life believing that this teacher thought I was average. A week later, I've had this idea, I've had this idea, I've had this idea, I'm putting this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And all of a sudden you just take the lid off this thing that had been, canned up for so many years. And you just see the flow come in. But again, like you mentioned the book, coming back to the inspiration. we rewire what that person thinks is possible based on kind of that what they thought was impossible or improbable because of that trauma reaction. You rewire that, and you're rerouting the energy. So rather than the energy going into a dead end and saying this isn't possible, I can't do this, we just flick the switch and go, actually, that's not the truth. We change track and we go again.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. And
two things that you brought up that I really loved. One was, I heard, when we improve the relationship with the self, we improve all our relationships. It bleeds over into life. So to upgrade our personal relationship with ourselves, I'm sure there are certain practices that will work for absolutely everyone. What are some quick ones that you would suggest trying out or trying on?
First one's open questions, categorically. So I would find, I would do some analysis, and I think this is in the book, but this is something I share regularly with people. One is just ask yourself 3 key questions. One is, what have you been most proud of in the last 12 months?
It's in there.
No, yeah. No, it doesn't matter if it's in work, it's at home, whatever it is. What are you most proud of that you've done in the last 12 months?
Self-appreciation.
Yeah. And find that. And then your brain doesn't know if it's now or before, but the moment you start thinking about it, you're going to start getting flooded with oxytocin and serotonin and all those beautiful, juicy things to get you going. Actually, I feel proud, parental pride, whatever it is. Other question, what are you know, in the next 12 months are you getting most excited about, or have you been most excited about over the last 12 months? Yeah. And again, just thinking about projects you're involved in, or things that you've done, or things that you were preparing, maybe like a child's birthday party or an interview, whatever it was, and start listing those things out.
So the questions, call it quality questions, are used as a tool to then refocus the mind and the energy and attention of the person answering the question into what they do want more of, rather than being overwhelmed and burdened by the chaos that's going on in their personal life.
Yeah. So we do those as the first 2 questions. The third one is kind of list out what your top 3 to 5 values are. So what we start to do is we can list out these scenarios where I've created pride in my life. So I actually have a tangible reference point where I have actually done that. It's not just some made up, nice to have affirmation like law of attraction, spiritual woo-woo. It's actually pragmatic, practical thing. I have a clear reference point of this. I have a clear reference point of the truth about what makes me excited. Okay, cool. I can tap into those 2 things. And I also have a list of what's important to me, whether it's family, fitness, health. For me, it's challenge. Whatever it is, I'm listing my top 3 to 5 values. But then what we can say is, okay, well, based on these scenarios, what is it that I bought most of? What was it that I contributed to these things? What, from these values, what is it I like to bring most of those into these scenarios where I created pride and excitement? So we start to cross-reference things, like super simply. And then from that kind of overview of what's going on in our world, and people can't say there isn't any, because there's always something you're proud of. It might even be just getting out of bed in the morning if you're really depressed. It might be, getting half your clothes on because actually you couldn't bring yourself to no, actually I'm proud of myself for getting that far because I wasn't able to do that yesterday. Okay, fuck yeah. Yeah, whatever it is, even the so-called smallest things. Again, we have to remember the problem that we have as human beings is we make our trauma comparative, not relative. But we also make our actions to move out of it comparative, relative. Oh, it's not as good as so-and-so. Oh, I'm not making as much as so-and-so. No, it's what is good for you. Yeah. And then when we see those things, okay, well, actually, what do I want to do more of? We're going to start, okay, how can I bring more of that value into this conversation? How can I spend more time doing that thing there that creates more pride in my life? Because if I spend more time in the things that make me proud in life, do I go home at the end of my work day feeling more fulfilled, more successful? How do I make sure that 80% of my time is spent on things that fill me with pride and excitement? Okay, cool. What's that job title? I'm going to apply for that job because that's where it's at. So we start to use this kind of a little bit of an analysis of our own lives, because there's been stuff that is good. We may not realize it, there is, and you may need someone to objectively soundboard that stuff. There is always something in there that is good, that you've always done something, you have done something, small moments. Prime example, even if we're homeless on the street, I remember walking through Brazil. I was in Rio de Janeiro, walking back from a training session, and I was there with my umbrella for whatever reason, just kind of walking along with my umbrella, going home. and this dude's on his phone next to me. And he's just about to step out into the middle of the road, hasn't seen the lights have gone green, he's about to step out in front of a motorcyclist going quite fast. But even for me to kind of whack the guy with the umbrella, which is what I did, I gave him quite a swift tap in the chest with the umbrella because he didn't know what the hell was going on because he's on his mobile phone. Now, even if someone's done that for someone, that's a small thing that's incrementally, massively changed that guy's life. Yeah.
For
now,
sure.
Even if we're homeless, we have opportunity to do that. We have moments of clarity, which we can call on where we've helped someone, or we've given someone else a piece of food, or we've shared our change with someone, or whatever it is. And we can find those moments. And then when we tap into those moments, okay, I have a reference point that actually I can connect with who I truly am, because that's who I truly am. And I can then connect that to the next moment. I can look for the next glimmer of hope in that.
And those things build momentum and they stack. The more we focus on those things, the more we energize them, and the expansion is limitless. It's available to everyone. Have you heard of the reticular activating system?
Yep.
A piece of hardware that was installed within our brains. It works the same pretty much for everybody. It's unbreakable. We've got 40 billion bits of information coming at us with our 5 senses at all times, and it filters in and only allows in that which we think about. So then obviously we're going to create in alignment with what we focus on and think about. So those questions are empowering. They take a person from ashamed to empowered and hopeful. And I love those questions.
Yeah, and if you do that, for me, if you do that in the morning and just kind of make a reference point, and that way when you're on your way to work, whatever you do, okay, how can I add more of that value into this dialogue? How can I do more of that thing in this conversation or with this person? As I said, one of my core values is around challenge. It's about challenging my thinking, challenging other people's thinking. Now, actually, when I'm talking to a client, how can I challenge this client's thinking even more so they can become more incredible than yesterday? How can I help this person take more control in their life? How can I add more challenge into that product so it helps another client or pushes a client in a new direction? So I'm constantly using those values and those original kind of those reference points to keep me focused, kind of as a compass point to drive me into the next conversation, so I can create more of it and more of it and more of it. It's the same energy that builds you that destroys you. So if I look at my drug taking, when I was taking ecstasy and cocaine, night one is you take 1 ecstasy tablet, great. Well, night 2, it doesn't take, you need 2 ecstasy tablets, if not 3, and maybe a little bit of coke to kind of bump you up. But now it's the same energy I use to kind of do that with conversations with people. Actually, well, how can I put more challenge into this conversation? How can I add? That law of diminishing return. It doesn't feel the same when I do it for one person. I have to now do it at a new level. So as I start to incrementally build the blocks up. And when I look at this, when I talk about challenge now, life doesn't get easier. It's like a computer game. If you bought a computer game and the first level was so ridiculously hard that you couldn't complete it, how many computer games do you think I would sell? I wouldn't sell any. No. and this is the way that life works. Life doesn't start off massively problematic. It starts off with small challenges. We overcome. And each one of those challenges is just helping us to go to the next level. But most of us hit that challenge and think, oh, I haven't got the skill set. I'm not good enough. Fear of losing love, whatever. We hit the challenge and stop because we don't think we're capable of going up to the next level. But actually, what's happened at all the other previous levels is actually giving you a skill set in order for you to go up to that level.
That's what it's about, upgrading constantly.
Yeah. And it never stops.
That brings up this.
I was going to say, pray not for an easy life. Pray for the skills and the tools in order to overcome a difficult one. I think was Bruce Lee's quote.
What was that quote?
Pray not for an easy life. Pray for the skills to, I think he says, endure a difficult one. But actually, I prefer to overcome a difficult, to overcome the obstacles.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Jim Rohn teaches some similar things, like we can become better, we can become stronger, we can become wiser, and in acquiring the skills and seeking them out to do those things, our life expands and we're more abundant and we can contribute more to others. Before I said there was 2 things you had mentioned. One was the self-work that bleeds over into the work of everything else. The other one was sort of someone who's been in a pressure cooker and that pressure's been building, and there's just one little thing that's said or done that they experience, like trying out psychedelics or doing hypnotherapy that will then, you said, either pop off that pressure cookers, pressure, let it out, or take
Yeah.
off the lid entirely and just let them boil over until, there's just different analogies that came to mind when you were talking about those things that were brilliant. And being able to expand your life with the help of another is just the value in seeking out a mentor or someone who has done some work and had similar experiences to you. And when we seek out their help, what we're getting isn't really help, it's empowerment to help ourselves. And that's the key. We can't ask someone else to do our work for us. We've got to do it ourselves. Our upgrades, our personal reality, leveling up in the video game of life, it's all entirely 100% our responsibility. A lot of us just go through life sleeping. We don't ever wake up, and we don't even really want to face the fact that we may be sleeping, let alone there's all of this expansion out there waiting for us, and we're being called into it constantly. And I think that from what I'm hearing, these past few years, you've done some serious personal work that's empowered you to then empower others even better to help themselves. And I'm really curious about this journey that you were talking about earlier. In the past few years, you've come a long way. What sparked that, and what have you been doing, and how has it empowered you?
So the biggest spark was actually the frustrations of what I was going through in corporate life. So I've always known that I didn't fit, and I've never fitted in. In school, in kind of social dynamics, it wasn't me. Working in finance, working for car insurance, and it's not about people. It's always been about numbers, and it doesn't matter how people dress it up. It's just that's the way it is. And it was just I was getting more and more frustrated. I found that I was doing more research myself on leadership development, and I found that I was actually more qualified than the people delivering the content in the specific department. And I wanted my managers to see me, and I wanted my leaders to see me and how good I was. And it was just getting more and more agitated. And I was like, okay, well, this is ridiculous. I need to go and get into my own business here and kind of start doing it. So I started working a second job in leadership development, delivering leadership content. I qualified as a leadership coach at this period of my time in my life as well. And I'm delivering stuff on the side inside my day job, but I'm also got a side job as well, side hustle where I'm working and I'm traveling around the country delivering leadership content. So I'm juggling hours, juggling family life, all these things. But the pressure's mounting, really not happy with certain situations and how they're playing out. And again, I don't fit. So I ended up going and working for one of the training companies that I was then an associate for, contracting for. And I went and worked with them. So inside that space, I was working with them for 5 months. We negotiated a change in contract and a change in salary and stuff, increased my salary and decreased my hours so I could carry on working my own business and also work for them. It was a great deal. And then 5 months later, COVID hit. And then, I'm gone from face-to-face clients to, pivoting to delivering online content for them, and their clients dried up and all postponed within the space of 48 hours. So, there's some great conversations between my boss in Floating Speech Marks and me, changing the dynamic and negotiated things. But, what I'd already been finding in that kind of conversation, like in that role with the one-to-one work, that I was getting people to a certain level, but I couldn't take them any further. I could see what the problem was through my training in psychotherapy models and leadership models and all that. I could see what the issue was, but I didn't have a safe container to take them through. And I'd already at this point, I'd sat with psilocybin mushrooms a couple of times, been supported with that as well, supporting myself, self-experiments, but also done higher dosages as well with a psychotherapist connection of mine who sat for me. So I was processing stuff using my coaching skills and my psychotherapy skills, and also some awareness of shamanic practices as well, and starting to sit medicine on my own, which enabled me to process at quite a high speed. And I was starting to observe, though, in people that I could see what the problem was. I could tell you what the problem was. I could tell them what the problem was, but I couldn't take them to the safe place to resolve that. So I wouldn't tell them anything because I said, look, I can see there's stuff coming up for you. I need to refer you to a friend of mine. Please have a conversation with him. Let me know how you get on, because what's coming up for me is outside of my gift. It's outside of my remit. So COVID hits, job pivots, and inside that space, I'd already prepared to do an ayahuasca ceremony at this point in time, but because of COVID, things have been postponed and moved around and stuff as well. And it got moved. I got a date at the end of January. Stress levels in the business I was working in were mounting rapidly due to like lack of sales and stuff coming through, and certain personality traits were starting to come out in people I was working with. And I was like, this isn't okay. I don't feel good with this. This isn't right. And actually it was just a repetition of my bullying patterns. I was being bullied because of stuff that they had going on for them outside. I said,
Massive amounts of fear being introduced to their minds through social media and the news. And yeah, unreal. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's kind of, you just have to see it for what it is. And but I'm sitting in this process, and I'm working with a Native American medicine wheel practitioner. I'm working with a hypnotherapist. I'm working with myself as well as a leadership coach, and I'm doing 30 days of preparation to sit ayahuasca.
As far as dietary preparation?
But also mental. So most people kind of do 48 hours. They do 2 days. They'll get an email that says, oh, please don't drink coffee or drink alcohol or eat red meat or whatever for 2 days beforehand, and we'll see you at the... No. 30 days, clear intention setting. So I do 30 days, start at 30 days. Okay, what's my intention? What do I want to clear? What do I want to cleanse? Okay, write that down. And every day I go back to that and kind of whittle it down. Okay, what's coming up for me? And I'm using set questions from medicine wheel techniques and approach that my coach is sharing with me at this point. I'm doing some hypnotherapy work to get really into alignment with who I am and what I'm doing. And I'm also processing and journaling using my own questions as well. I'm kind of getting really, really focused. Halfway through that, I'm just like, actually, I can't be in this relationship with this person anymore. I need to stop this. This job isn't right for me. It's not what I'm being called to do. And part of my journey over the last 4 years initially was, I want to be working with plant medicine, psychoactive compounds, because there are a lot of people out there that see it as a panacea, as a silver bullet, but they don't necessarily have the funds and the resources to go to Peru to be in a held space or a safe container to do this. So there's going to be people out there that are going to they might go and buy a bag of mushrooms or whatever and think this is going to be the silver bullet for them, and they end up taking magic mushrooms or DMT or whatever, without the reverence and respect that's required, and they're going to end up causing more trauma as a result than what they actually went in with. So I'm kind of I'm kind of feeling this pull for this kind of element of my work. Relationship dynamics, and I'm still at this point I'm still 2 weeks out from the ayahuasca retreat. I haven't even got to the ayahuasca yet, and my relationship with my boss at this point completely changes, and I say, this isn't where I need to be. I'm completely cool with this. I dissolved the relationship, much to his upset, and frustration. But again, how do you deal with that? I kept coming back to center. Okay, actually, is this right for me? Do I need to just trust and surrender, trust and surrender, trust and surrender?
Questions only, or do you meditate, or were there other practices that were helping you to re-ground and recenter?
So even in the conversations I was having with him, it's just remind trust and surrender. This is absolutely the right thing that I need to do. I need to dissolve this relationship in this format and trust that the universe is going to catch me when I take this step.
How in the hell do you cultivate the courage to... That's a massive shift. That's a big step.
Fucking huge.
How do you do that?
And I say it's huge because at this point, I'm the only income earner in the house because we homeschool our daughter, and we always have done. Brilliant. And we have a mortgage, and it's the middle of COVID. And what do I have? I have a lot of skills up here, but I have no way to market, and I don't even know who my clients are.
How do you shift from fear to courage and do something that huge? That's just unreal.
And this is kind of that preparation piece. So the tension had been mounting. Like all the way through COVID, the tension's mounting, kind of something feels off, something else feels off, and kind of trusting that intuition and going, okay, something. And then when I'm sitting with 30 days, okay, actually, and one of those intentions I was setting was, okay, I want to understand what my business looks like if I'm working alongside psychoactive compounds. Okay, cool. And part of that came up with trust and surrender. If you want to this part of it was, if you this doesn't feel right, if you want to be working in this space, you're going to have to start going in a slightly different direction, because this isn't everyone's cup of tea, quite literally, yeah. And not everyone's going to be comfortable with kind of saying that actually someone who does this is working in an organization, or whatever it might be. Okay, cool. If I'm going to be here, trust and surrender. My wife had also gone through a trust and surrender process for the front end of the year as well. No, just on her own journey with sciatica and huge amounts of body pain, nothing else included. And we got to that point. It's like, and she was 100%. I've overheard that conversation. That's not okay. We'll make it work. So my wife steps in, and I'm kind of feeling it as well, and she just completely ratified it, and we both came to it in alignment at exactly the same point, middle of July 2020. And we're like, this is exactly what needs to happen. Trust and surrender. Okay, cool. I don't know how it's going to work. She said, no, it doesn't matter. We just trust and surrender. So this is 2 weeks before I even sit medicine with the ayahuasca. And then 2 weeks later, I sit with the ayahuasca and also with bufo as well, which is a whole different, bufo is toad venom.
Okay, gotcha. Hallucinogen.
One of the most powerful kind of hallucinogens, entheogens that the mind could not even perceive without even doing it. So 2 weeks before then, I close that relationship. I start to then look at what my life looks like. I continue doing the journaling, intention setting. Diet's completely shifted over the 4 weeks. I then go and sit medicine. And then just process, and then just kind of sit with that. And then that radically changed what I was doing. Now I was doing the work to do the work. I was checking my judgments of people in process. I was checking what was coming up for me. I was listening to what was being shared in integration circles. I was listening to how people were facilitating the integration circles. I was hearing the language, but I'm really hearing the language to the point where kind of what you would know as the spirit of Mother Ayahuasca was pointing it out to me. And like, this is why this person used this language. This is why they've said this. And so all of these things over this course of 4 days, all these building blocks were dropping in for me. But that's all well and good knowing that stuff, but it doesn't get you clients. So stuff is starting to bubble up for me. It's like, well, actually, where are my clients? Who are my clients? What social media platform do I need to be on doing this? And all this stuff. But what the ceremony actually opened up for me was the fear of not good enough. So we're in the beginning of August or middle of August at this point in time. And I'm now, I have no job. I potentially got some work coming in from somewhere, maybe on some contracts and bits and bobs, but nothing, I've got bits. So we're kind of sitting on our savings at this moment in time. And then I go and meet Tom. And Tom's my teacher of hypnotherapy, and what he's talking about from they call it's FreeMind. It's called Rapid Change Therapy, and it's a modality of hypnotherapy that predominantly looks at inner child healing as one of the major portions of what it does. But he talks about oneness, he talks about unified consciousness, he talks about all these things that we talk about inside kind of plant medicine spaces and spiritual spaces, the super conscious, as I kind of refer to it as. I start talking to him about the challenges I see in modern leadership and modern parenting, and all these different things that are coming up, and this fear of not good enough that's coming up in me. And he goes, what you're talking about, Nathan, is exactly what we do at FreeMind. So I want you to come and do the training with me and experience that so you can start using it. Oh, okay, cool. This actually makes sense. So there's me worrying about where my clients are. And then what happens is I'm talking to a friend of mine. And I say to her, oh, I'm learning this modality of hypnotherapy, and I'm going to combine it with these things that I've already done in leadership psychology and psychotherapy, and then also combine that potentially with the uses of plant medicines and psychoactive compounds. And she went, that's really fucking interesting. Can I sign up to be your client after you've done the training? I was like, of course you can. So even before I'd done the training, my life was shifting, having kind of had that clarity of thinking and sitting in medicine and kind of sitting in that space and kind of making those intentions and making it, was already bringing people into my world to develop that skill set. End of November, I retrained in hypnotherapy. So I trained in hypnotherapy. But inside of that, you talked about the rose-tinted glasses and removing the plinth and stuff. Here's the interesting bit. I'm the only income earner in the house, and I don't know where my clients are coming from. So within about 2 months, we could no longer make the mortgage repayments on the house. Mm-hmm. So we had to sell the house and then go in a different direction with what we're doing, because the housing market was really buoyant, but we didn't have the money, and I couldn't get a mortgage because I didn't have enough self-employed books to show the bank to validate that I was going to be making money. Mm-hmm. So we had to sell the house. And then what we're doing, we've actually ended up moving inland a little bit, and we're in what they call shared ownership. So like a housing association owns a portion of the house, we own a portion of the house, and we pay them rent for the portion that they own. So we've had to do this, but I've gone through this kind of real roller coaster over the last 3 to 4 years of working corporate, understanding, kind of finding out who I am, looking at these different experiences, really processing my trauma, and really trusting and surrendering that actually this is the right thing to do. Dissolve my job. Okay. Using the money up, don't have any savings. Okay, trust and surrender. What's going to happen with the house? We sell the house. Okay, we made some profit on the house. Fantastic. And we've also actually moved to a location that we potentially wouldn't have been able to afford before, which puts us closer to parents, which obviously aren't getting any younger. So like, there's all these kind of valuable, these positives that are in there. But at the same time, you still have that emotional stuff that sits in the background of, this fear of not good enough, this fear of losing love, of, this terror that I'm the one that's lost my job, or I'm the one that's lost our house. You still have those little plagues that come up, but then you just go back and go, well, actually, is that truth? Is that fact or fiction? And then kind of go into it. So that roller coaster now is leading me to now working with clients one-to-one, working with organizations, still doing leadership development, and contracts that I've got coming in, but also doing more work with therapists, healers, spiritual practitioners as well, that in the majority of suddenly start again, they've got to a point where they've got a block, but they almost feel like they should know better because they've got the skill set in order to move beyond it, but they need someone else to soundboard for them. And I'm speaking to more people, about their trauma. Okay, why is the PTSD there? Where does that come from? What was the pivotal moment? Let's go back and rescue that kid and bring it. And the clarity that has come to me over the 12 months, not many people would be stupid enough, in the nicest possible way, to go self-employed in the middle of a pandemic, But in that process, again, it's coming back to that trust and surrender. And it's the first time I've ever really, really done it, like wholeheartedly trust and surrender. Okay, I'm going to make the step, and I need the universe to catch me. And the universe caught me exactly how I needed to be caught at that point in time.
This is a massive message that I just received through listening to the story. Alignment leads to synchronistic living through trust and surrender. I love that. Yeah. And what you did is absolutely insane to most people, but it worked anyway because you trusted and you surrendered. And I really do believe that you're someone who has been being prepared your entire life to do what you're doing now. And you will continue to prepare and be prepared in ways you don't even know yet to impact a massive amount of people. And in the book, Stop Working, Start Living, you have a goal of impacting 100 million people. By impacting one, you can then impact 7 more, and then there's 7. And it just keeps going. And it's possible that you may be closer to that than you know, really.
Yep. Agreed. Thank you.
And the reticular activating system programmed your subconscious to seek out ways to make that happen.
Yep.
I believe that. And even not knowing, maybe you've been acquiring new skills, going through training, and just making a massive difference.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that something else that came up in my consciousness this morning and yesterday. One of the key traits of imposter syndrome is getting overqualified. Now, we say that I'm not qualified enough. I need to go and get this qualification. I need to get this accreditation. I need to prove to somebody that I've got a piece of paper that can, is not just for wiping your backside on or wallpapering, But we get ourselves confused in that. But the majority of us go through our lives up until when we have what Brené Brown calls the midlife unraveling. Is we make all these mistakes, we create basically a shitstorm for ourselves all the way up to our midlife, with these broken relationships and things, relationships we ruin and stuff we do. And all of a sudden, there's a few of us that will look back and go, and inside that, we're doing qualifications and we're doing our life trainings, and maybe we are getting qualified as a life coach or whatever, and then get back to them, it's like, shit, if I was paying attention a bit more when I was 21, maybe that thing would have happened. But if that thing didn't have happened, I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have done this. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Now at 43, I'm a little bit more alert and a bit more astute to what's going on. Now I can see the damage that I've done and also the tools that I have available. Okay, what am I going to do now? Okay, I train in hypnotherapy. Okay, there's a couple of other things I want to learn, which I'm then going to incorporate and infuse with that, But I'm doing it from a really conscious place where I can say that because of those stories and because I can tell that story fairly loudly, maybe it stops someone else from dying quietly. Now, maybe that I can go out there and kind of make that ripple. And I've seen it with my clients because their kids have said to them, you know what, I'm struggling, because they can see that they're doing the work. You know, they're starting there's that shift, which is happening for different people at different times. That is the ripple.
You know, you regaled us with a tale of being bullied and running away. And I had asked you, you know, projecting your current state of mind back into that 13-year-old's body, what would you have done differently? I would have gone home with that black eye. You've done that now. You're going through life, getting beat up, and you're still relentless and you're still moving forward. And that's admirable. That's inspiring. I love that. I think that in our own way, all of us are being prepared. We're all qualifying to do more and to create more and to connect more. And some people do it more quickly than others, but I loved the acorn tree analogy. Like, the acorn tree is not going to look at the acorn and say, why the hell aren't you a tree yet? What's wrong with you? You know, we all grow and blossom in our own time. And a lot of it is due to questions and a personal awakening, a self-awakening, you know, self-awareness. And I just love what a questioner you are. It reminds me how important questions truly are. I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes. Is there anything that you would like to share before we close with people? Any upgrade opportunities, advice, things that have worked for you and things that you've noticed that work for pretty much everybody?
Yeah, two things I'm going to share, and it's come back to that alignment piece. So one of the meditations, one of the hypnotic journeys I went on before preparing for medicine last year was an alignment piece. And you know, quite a lot of the time when I'm going through altered states of consciousness, I check out for most of the experience. A good friend of mine, we have a script called alignment. So it's about you aligning with who you are. It's about you getting in contact with your higher self and kind of drawing that stuff in. And the moment that we start doing that, we may not notice necessarily immediately the changes, but we get those synchronistic drop-ins. We get those downloads, and there's something shifts to 1 degree that we don't notice until we look back over 3, 4, 5 months' time and go, oh, now I understand why that happened. Okay, I get it now. That's that thing coming to life. That's that thing starting to work. So that's hugely important for me. One of the routes I then changed direction with my work is doing something a little bit more spiritual in practice. So every new moon, what I do is I do a group journey where I take people through a hypnosis process. And I DJ music and I play music and I read them a script and I take them on a journey to meet their higher selves or to get rid of the ego, to get out of their own way, to maybe plan out what 6 months from now look like, whatever that kind of that intuitive journey looks like for me. So I take people into a deep space of hypnosis. I take them on a deep process of connecting to their higher self, and then just letting whatever come in. And I do that every new moon. I'm not huge into astrology, but I like to work with the new moon and full moon, because I know that as human beings on water, there's a lot more influence. I don't think we give it enough credit for the influence it has on us and energetically what it can tune us into. So every new moon I do that. It's paid by donation. If you feel called to pay, great. If you're able to, if you're not able to pay, or you didn't get what you thought out, then there's no obligation to pay that. You just come along and you enjoy the process. Connect with me on Facebook. You attend that process. You see what comes up. And I say to people, come along and attend at least 2 or 3 of them, because sometimes it takes your subconscious mind a little while to get used to me and my voice. But the moment you start doing that, you will start to see the pay, like the return on investment that you put in on the time when you do those things as well. So I highly recommend people come along to one of those as well.
So alignment, and you said there was one other thing. And if you do send some links for the new moon process and that ceremony that you do, I'll absolutely share the hell out of that. And I'm kind of curious that you do it all through Facebook. It's on video.
All through Zoom. All on Zoom.
Gotcha.
And actually, the funny thing with hypnosis, in some senses, hypnosis actually works better on Zoom than it does face to face, because you're sitting in the comfort of your own home with a nice warm cup of tea, and you haven't got to worry about safe, comfortable, and if you have a deep process, you haven't got to worry about your mascara exiting your eyelashes and visiting your chin and then having to get on a bus to go home. and it can happen anywhere. So yeah, for me, like there's two things. One is the alignment piece, but two, I think, is then doing that spiritual connection. I think it's really kind of it's that alignment, coming back to who you are, and then taking the time to have that spiritual connection as well. And I would, I can't recommend it enough. Even if you came along and attended one of those once every couple of months, depending on where you want to go to in your journey, you will get heaps out of that. But then obviously there's working with one-to-one, or there's coming to work with my membership group as well. The membership group starts to get a little bit juicy because it's hinged on the new moon process. And then we go and do integration circles, then we do a full moon circle, and we do healing circles all over Zoom as well. So we're just constantly building that monthly momentum up of going in, connecting, clearing down, healing, integrating on a cycle to keep people processing and journeying, on their own terms, which is, I think, is huge for people.
Brilliant. I mean, I started recording, we are off and running, went pretty dang deep. And this conversation for me has been transformative, and I really hope that it'll do the same for others. I did want to share something that I've been doing about 1.5 to 2 years now. Paul Stamets was on the Joe Rogan show, and he had mentioned something called a lion's mane mushroom.
Yep.
You Google lion's mane mushroom, and you'll see at the base of a tree what looks like someone removed off of a lion and put onto the base of the tree. That's a beautiful thing. It's completely legal, and you can buy it in grocery stores. I tend to go the less expensive route. I'll go to the hippie store, down here in Tempe, Arizona, and buy bulk lion's mane for, say, $30. Buy capsules for $11 on Amazon. Use my coffee grinder, grind it up, and I've been taking 2 little capsules in the morning, 2 at night for coming on 2 years. And Paul Stamets described the use of this lion's mane mushroom as following. He said, up to 40% of all people that are in nursing homes suffering from the ill effects of Alzheimer's come out of it and get their lives back, fully recover. And what this mushroom does, and hell if I know how people found out about these plant medicines and different natural herbs and things, but it actually repairs the ends of the axons. It builds up the fluidity sac and causes the neurons, billions in our minds and our brains, to connect more quickly and to share information at massively improved amounts, and the higher level of being able to connect with myself has improved my connection with others and up-leveled and upgraded my life in every way. And I'm not saying that my life got better because of this only, but things stack, all the small, seemingly meaningless things that stack up and build a life of greatness. I mean, that's our responsibility. Nobody's going to come in and save us. We're here to save ourselves and then empower others with information to do these things for themselves. And again, the book, Stop Working, Start Living by Nathan Simmonds. I highly recommend buying this. I'll put the link down below for buying it through Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to send me links after we're done for everything that you'd like to share with people, potential clients, different things that you're into. And you've kind of covered a plethora of areas, and these things that you're speaking of are attractive to me. And I'm sure that others will be attracted to what you do and the potential for healing from trauma and expanding into alignment with themselves so that they can better connect with others and build a much more beautiful and enjoyable personal reality. Thank you so much for coming on the Good in the Head podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping for a part 2 one of these days. I know you've got so much more to share that you want to get out there. And I really appreciate and thank you for everything you shared today and over the years as I've been able to keep up with you on your journey through social media. I mean, Tim Ferriss said, look, we all need a mentor of some kind. We all need an upgrade possibility. And this can be done through absorbing the content, the voices, the recordings, the quotes, and the books of others. And that's what I've been doing through you. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's such a absolute gift. Appreciate it.
Yeah. The Good in the Head podcast is exclusively on YouTube for now. The website is www.goodinthehead.com. And I invite everyone to go there, click on the menu button, explore the site. There's a lot there, and that I just keep adding to it. It's going to be a lifelong project. It's going to be massive. And the more clear I get on my own purpose through people like you, the easier that site will get to navigate.
Awesome.
But, all right. Well, hang on just one moment, and we'll chat. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Thank you.